What's going on, everybody? Kalipis Tech here, coming back at you with another video. In this video, we're going to be doing a quick comparison between the Motorola Moto G Power 5G and the Samsung Galaxy A34 5G. Now, as always, if you do end up wanting to learn more about either phone individually, be sure to check out the description, where we'll be linking to several other videos about them, as well as some information about pricing, availability, and some of my favorite smartphone accessories. But with that being said, let's get into it. So with the Moto G Power 5G, we're getting a 6.5-inch 120Hz IPS LCD display with a 1080p resolution, a PPI of 405, and a 20:9 aspect ratio. With the Samsung Galaxy A34 5G, we're getting a slightly larger 6.6-inch 120Hz Super AMOLED display with a 1080p resolution as well, a PPI of 390, and a 19.5:9 aspect ratio. So in general, both phones do have really good displays, but in a couple ways, I would say the A34 5G is a bit better. First of all, at 6.6 inches versus 6.5, it is slightly larger, and with a 19.5:9 aspect ratio versus 20:9, it just looks bigger in general. So if you're going to be on your phone a bit more doing stuff like reading, web browsing, social media, watching videos, you will get a slightly better experience with the A34 5G. In addition to this, despite both phones having really nice looking 1080p displays, with the Super AMOLED, the colors with the A34 are a bit more vibrant, the display is going to be brighter in general. With the A34, the viewing angles are also significantly better, so if you're outside in the sun, for example, or really in any kind of bright area, the A34 5G will have an advantage. But again, with the Moto G Power 5G, the display is definitely not bad, and honestly, for most people, if you are looking for a nice display, you're definitely not going to go wrong with this phone either. Now for storage, with the Moto G Power 5G, we're getting 256GB of internal storage with microSD card expansion, and with the A34 5G, we're getting 128GB with microSD card expansion as well. But keep in mind, with the A34 5G, there's another variant that also has 256, and with the Moto G Power 5G, this phone in my hand is the factory unlocked version, and if you end up getting this phone from a US carrier once they start carrying them, I doubt it's going to have the full 256GB. That being said though, no matter what, I don't imagine the Moto G Power 5G getting less than 128GB, and honestly getting the factory unlocked version is really not that expensive. It's going for around $299 full price, and there are sales from time to time, so in general I feel like this phone, especially for the price, does give us a lot of value when it comes to storage. And with the A34 5G, really same kind of thing. Typically the version of this phone you're commonly going to find does only have 128GB, but even then for the average user, I feel like there is going to be plenty of storage. So either way, with either phone here, storage is really not going to be a problem. For security features, both phones have Face Unlock, and they both have fingerprint scanners too. With the Moto G Power 5G, it's right here on the power key, and with the A34 5G, it's in the display. But starting with the Moto G Power 5G, let's give them a try. There we go, one more time. And there we go. And now for the Samsung Galaxy A34 5G. There we go, one more time. And there we go. So both fingerprint scanners worked real well, no issues at all. And again, remember, both phones have Face Unlock too, so if you want to use that instead, you always can. Now for the camera setups here, with the Moto G Power 5G, up front, we got a real nice looking hole punch design for the selfie camera. This camera is 16 megapixels. Then on the back, we got a triple camera setup with a 50 megapixel main camera, a 2 megapixel depth sensing camera, and a 2 megapixel macro camera. For video, this phone does max out at 1080p in both the rear and front cameras. Not really surprising, but just keep in mind, if you do want to record 4K videos, you might not want to get this phone. With the A34 5G, up front we got sort of a water drop notch for the front facing camera. I feel like it doesn't look as nice as a hole punch, but it gets the job done. This camera is 13 megapixels. Then on the back, we got a triple camera setup with a 48 megapixel main camera, an 8 megapixel ultra wide camera, and a 5 megapixel macro camera. Then for video, keep in mind this phone can record 4K videos in both the rear and front cameras, so between the two, if you are recording lots of videos and you want to get that higher resolution, the A34 5G will have an advantage. And again, keep in mind, unfortunately the Moto G Power 5G does not have an ultra wide camera, whereas the A34 5G does. So in general, when it comes to overall camera features, the A34 5G does also have an advantage there. Now to give you an idea of what they can do, first, here's some pictures taken with the Moto G Power 5G. Overall, definitely great quality, especially considering, again, this is really more of an affordable kind of entry-level 5G phone. So a lot of people getting a device like this might not really expect a whole lot, but I feel like the quality overall is pretty much good enough for anything. If you're doing something like Instagram, for example, sure, it's not going to be nearly as good as a really high-end, super expensive phone, but at the same time, things are going to blend right in. I mean, social media platforms compress the quality anyway, so it's not like your portrait photo is going to look 10 times worse than somebody who is using an iPhone or something. So in general, I feel like for the average user, you you really don't need a whole lot more than this. And then here's some pictures taken with the A34 5G. Just like the Moto G Power 5G, I do think these photos are great quality. Now, when it comes to which one is better between the two, I'll let you decide that for yourself. But in general, if you want to take some nice regular photos, either phone here will be a great choice. So at the end of the day, between the two, when it comes to the cameras, it really depends on the features you want. On one hand, if features really aren't that important to you, then keep in mind the Moto G Power 5G, despite not having as many, still has a decent amount of stuff. I mean, it has a macro camera and plenty of different camera modes. Plus, again, the photo quality, as you saw, was pretty good for what it is, so you're really not going to go wrong with this phone. On the other hand though, if you want an ultra-wide camera, and maybe you're recording lots of videos too, and you want the option to record in 4K, then in that case, again, the A34 5G will have an advantage. Now when it comes to RAM and processor, with the Moto G Power 5G, we're getting 6GB of RAM with the MediaTek Dimensity 930 processor. With the Samsung Galaxy A34 5G, we're also getting 6GB of RAM with the MediaTek Dimensity 1080. Now, between the two, I would say without a doubt, the A34 5G is the faster device here, but really not by a whole lot. On one hand, yeah, again, it is faster, and if you're going to be on your phone a lot, especially doing more demanding activities, you will notice somewhat of a difference, but the Moto G Power 5G is really not that far behind, and for either phone, for more basic activities like web browsing, social media, streaming content like videos and music, and maybe playing a game or two. For that kind of stuff, they will get the job done just fine, and while neither phone is nearly as fast as like a $1,000 flagship phone, for example, for pretty much everything people are normally using smartphones for nowadays, again, either phone will get the job done just fine. Now I did run a benchmark test on each phone using Geekbench 6, and here are the results I got. So again, as you can see, the A34 5G has a slight advantage, but again, it's really not that much of a difference, so either way, it's not like if you get the A34, you're going to be that far ahead, whereas if you get the Moto G Power 5G, it's going to be that much slower. So again, for what they are, you're really not going to go wrong with either phone here, but if you do want the faster device between the two, the A34 5G will have an advantage. Now both phones here have 5,000 mAh batteries, with the Moto G Power 5G supporting 15W fast charging and the A34 5G supporting 25. So definitely great batteries. With a 5,000 mAh battery, either phone will get really good battery life and longevity. So if that is more of a priority for you, you're definitely not going to go wrong with these phones. And when it comes to charging speed, yeah, on one hand, the A34 5G does charge a bit faster, but keep in mind to actually utilize the full fast charging, you will need an actual 25W charger, and neither phone comes with a charger that's that strong. With the Moto G Power 5G, you will at least get a 10W charger, whereas with the A34 5G, it doesn't even come with any kind of wall adapter, so you're kind of on your own when it comes to that. But just keep in mind, both phones do charge really fast. Obviously, the A34 5G is going to be a bit faster, but even with the Moto G Power 5G, the charging speed is still pretty good. For the software, both phones do have Android 13, so great to see there. But when it comes to software support, I personally would say the A34 5G will definitely have an advantage. This phone is pretty much guaranteed to get Android 14, 15, 16, and 17, whereas with the Moto G Power 5G, I think this phone is at least going to get Android 14, if not 15 too. But beyond that, I really don't know. Motorola's software support in general is a little bit inconsistent and definitely not nearly as good as Samsung's. So if software support and really just long-term updates are important to you, I would definitely go with the Samsung. But if you're really only planning on keeping your phone for like a year or two anyway, the Moto G Power 5G will still be perfectly fine. When it comes to other features, keep in mind that unfortunately, for whatever reason, the Moto G Power 5G does not have NFC, which I feel like is honestly a pretty big drawback considering at this point in 2023, pretty much every new 5G phone except for Motorola's have NFC. So I don't really know why Motorola does this, but if you do like to use tap and pay, then between these two, the A34 5G will be a better choice. But on the other hand, unfortunately the A34 5G does not have a headphone jack, but the Moto G Power 5G does. So if you have a normal pair of wired headphones you want to use, then keep in mind with the Moto G Power 5G, of course, you can use them, whereas with the A34 5G, you will have to get an adapter. But in conclusion, which of these phones is better? In general, I feel like in a lot of ways, these phones are really close, and if you're looking for an affordable 5G phone that has a good amount of features, a nice display, a great camera, and a large battery, you're really not going to go wrong with either phone here. But honestly, between the two, I would say the Samsung Galaxy A34 5G is slightly better. First of all, again, this phone has significantly better software support, because even if the Moto G Power 5G gets 14 and 15, the A34 5G is definitely getting Android 14, 15, 16, and 17, which is just really hard to beat. It also is a little bit faster. The display is a bit larger and the Super AMOLED does give it a bit of an advantage. It does also have NFC, an ultra-wide camera, and it can record 4K videos too. But again, with the Moto G Power 5G, most likely, especially if you get this phone unlocked, with this device, you are going to have more storage. It also does have a pretty good camera too, pretty good performance, and again, it does have a headphone jack. But either way, again, if you are looking for a more affordable 5G phone, I do think both phones here are definitely worth considering. But this concludes my comparison between the Motorola Moto G Power 5G and the Samsung Galaxy A34 5G. Again, if you want to learn more about either phone individually, definitely check out the description, where I am linking to several other videos about them, as well as some information about pricing, availability, and some of my favorite smartphone accessories. But that's it for this video. If you enjoyed it and found it useful, be sure to give it a thumbs up and hit that subscribe button. Don't forget to follow Kalibis Tech on Twitter and Instagram. And as always, I will see you in the next video.